The Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome were masters of practical psychology long before the term existed. They developed a toolkit of mental exercises designed to cultivate resilience, gratitude, and inner peace. Among their most powerful techniques is a practice known as Premeditatio Malorum, a Latin phrase that translates to the premeditation of evils. At first glance, this might sound like a recipe for anxiety, a grim focus on everything that could possibly go wrong. But in reality, it is exactly the opposite. It is a proactive strategy to dismantle fear at its root, to strip future events of their terrifying power by confronting them in the mind before they ever have a chance to happen in reality. Imagine standing at the edge of a dark forest. You have been told that dangerous creatures lurk within, but you have never seen them. Your mind, left to its own devices, will fill the darkness with every imaginable horror. The fear of the unknown becomes far greater than any actual threat. This is the state in which most people live when it comes to the future. We worry about losing our jobs, our health, our loved ones. We dread public speaking, rejection, and failure. These fears loom in the abstract, vast, and undefined, and because they are undefined, they are infinite. Premeditatio Malorum is the act of lighting a torch and walking into that forest. It is the conscious decision to look directly at the monsters and see them for what they really are. The exercise is simple in its structure but profound in its execution. It involves setting aside time to vividly and deliberately imagine the worst-case scenarios that you fear. You do not just think about them in a vague sense. You visualize them in detail. You imagine what it would feel like to be fired from your job. You picture the conversation, the walk out of the building, the drive home, and the moment you have to tell your family. You imagine losing your health, feeling pain, and facing your own physical limitations. You imagine being criticized publicly, being humiliated, or being abandoned. You bring these fears out of the shadowy realm of anxiety and into the clear light of conscious thought. Why would anyone voluntarily do this? It seems counterintuitive to deliberately invite negative thoughts. But the Stoics understood a fundamental truth about the human mind: fear is almost always worse than the reality it anticipates. The philosopher Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The dread of a thing often causes us more pain than the thing itself. By premeditating the evil, you are effectively inoculating yourself against this imagined suffering. You are building a psychological callus. When you visualize the worst-case scenario, several powerful things happen. First, you begin to realize that you can survive it. In your mind, you walk through the experience of losing your job, and you see that on the other side of that event, you are still you. You still have your skills, your resilience, and your ability to adapt. You might have to change your lifestyle, you might have to search for a new opportunity, but you are not destroyed. The fear of the event is the fear of being annihilated by it. The visualization proves that annihilation is not the outcome. You will still be standing. Second, the practice forces you to distinguish between what is within your control and what is not. This is the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. You cannot control whether a hurricane comes, but you can control how you prepare for it. You cannot control whether your boss decides to let you go, but you can control your work ethic, your skills, and your reaction to the news. Premeditatio Malorum clarifies this boundary. It helps you to stop wasting energy on the terrifying, uncontrollable external event and instead focus your energy on your own internal response, which is the only thing you truly own. Third, this exercise shatters the illusion that the world owes you a trouble-free existence. The Stoics were not pessimists, they were realists. They knew that life is inherently unpredictable and that setbacks, losses, and difficulties are not anomalies but part of the natural course of being human. By expecting these challenges, you are not inviting them, you are simply refusing to be surprised by them. When you are not surprised, you are not emotionally devastated. You can respond with clarity and composure rather than panic and despair. It is the difference between a city that builds walls and stores grain before the siege begins, and one that scrambles in chaos only after the enemy is at the gates. Consider the fear of public speaking, a fear that ranks higher than the fear of death for many people. The fear is not of the act of speaking itself, but of the potential for judgment, for stumbling over words, for the audience's silent disapproval. Through Premeditatio Malorum, you would visualize the worst. You imagine walking on stage and forgetting your first sentence. You imagine the silence stretching out, the awkward coughs from the audience, the feeling of heat rising to your face. You sit with that feeling. And then you ask yourself, what happens next? The answer is, you take a breath. You look at your notes. You make a joke about your nerves. You start again. The audience, who are mostly concerned with their own lives, will likely forget the stumble within minutes. You realize that even the worst-case scenario is survivable. The fear of the unknown is replaced by a plan for the known. The paralyzing anxiety transforms into a manageable challenge. The practice also cultivates a deep and profound sense of gratitude. It is a tragic irony that we often appreciate things most only after we have lost them. Premeditatio Malorum allows us to appreciate them before they are gone. When you sit and truly imagine the absence of your partner, your child, or your health, you are immediately flooded with a powerful sense of appreciation for their presence. The warm light of a sunny day feels infinitely more precious when you have just spent 5 minutes contemplating a world of cold and darkness. This is not a morbid fantasy, it is a way of waking up from the trance of taking our lives for granted. It is a way of loving what we have, here and now, with a full awareness that it is temporary. Furthermore, this mental rehearsal builds a virtue that the Stoics held in the highest regard: courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the judgment that something else is more important than fear. It is the ability to act rightly in the face of danger or difficulty. By practicing Premeditatio Malorum, you are training your courage like a muscle. You are showing yourself, in the safe laboratory of your own mind, that you have the capacity to face adversity. You are building self-trust. When a real challenge arrives, you will not be meeting it as a stranger. You will have met it 100 times before in your meditations. You will have already rehearsed your response. You will be able to say to yourself, as the Emperor Marcus Aurelius did, "You have endured even greater things than this." You have already conquered this fear in your mind. Now, simply act. It is crucial to understand the intention behind this practice. It is not about living in a state of constant anxiety or expecting the worst at every turn. The goal is not to become a gloomy pessimist. The goal is to achieve a state of inner tranquility that is not dependent on external circumstances. The Stoic aims to be like a smooth, deep harbor that remains calm regardless of the storms raging on the sea. Premeditatio Malorum is the tool that dredges the harbor, removing the hidden rocks of fear that could tear a hole in the hull of your psyche when the storm hits. In our modern world, we are bombarded with messages telling us to eliminate risk, to seek comfort and security at all costs. We are sold products and ideologies that promise a life free from pain. This pursuit is a fool's errand. Life will always contain pain, loss, and difficulty. The only variable is how we meet them. We can meet them as terrified victims, caught completely off guard, our minds shattered by the unexpected blow. Or we can meet them as prepared individuals, our minds fortified by reason, our courage bolstered by practice. Premeditatio Malorum is the Stoic way to crush fear, not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by inviting it in, looking it in the eye, and realizing that you are bigger than it is. It is a reminder that the only thing we ever truly have to fear is the fear itself, the terrified story we tell ourselves about the future. When we stop telling that story and start looking at reality, even the harshest reality, we find that we have within us a strength that is more than equal to the task. So, take a few moments today. Sit quietly. Think of the thing you dread. Walk towards it in your mind. And discover the freedom that lies on the other side of fear.